Certainly was a different lifetime ago.
All right, I think we are up and going here, Ben. Let me just double check on our live feed here, and then we will be good to go. I'm going to get the tweet out. We're going to get everybody talking in chat. We've already got 200 here. There we go. Let's mute that, and here we are. It's our inaugural show of the one and only NFL Live Before Lock Showdown slate. This is your old pal Emac, joined by Ben Jazzraz Rasa, who is known for golf, college football, sports betting, dabbling in high stakes NBA, and trying to take down the luxury box every now and then. Is that your game of choice
It
this
used
year,
to
good
be, and
sir?
yeah, we'll see what we can do this year. But it is here finally. We've made it. Bears Packers, good game, tough showdown. We're gonna dive into it, of course, but a lot of exciting stuff for Thursday, that's for sure.
All right, absolutely, and we are brought to you by Fantasydraft. We're going to talk about them a couple times, but I do want to mention this. Now, while they don't have the showdown slate, you don't worry about that. They have a new feature, rake-free fantasy sports. And now that doesn't mean everything's free. You can play $100 a month and not have to pay any rake, the management fees, as they say, which on most sites run about 15.9%, between 10 and 15.9%, depending on your. Now, the best thing here about fantasy draft is it is the only rake-free daily fantasy site in the business. They've partnered with Hooters to bring you the largest guaranteed rake-free contest lineup in the history of daily fantasy sports. That is the $1 million Hooters kickoff, and that's only on Fantasy Draft. They are 100% of their entry fees will be paid out to contest winners. By the way, it's guaranteed for that first million. So if it doesn't fill, they're still paying out $1 million, which is pretty impressive. Now, how are you going to sign up? Well, you're going to go over there to fantasydraft.com. When you sign up and create your account, use your promo code AWESEMO. That's AWESEMO, and you'll get a 7-day free trial. What that free trial is you can play up to $1,000 rake free just by using our code. If you do not use our code, then you buy a little subscription. So if you want to play $500, that costs a certain amount. If you want to play $1,000, that costs a certain amount. If you want to play unlimited, that costs a different amount. Now, how that does is you can upgrade. So sort of like your cell phone overage charges. If your data is getting up there, you just upgrade to the next level, and you're good to go from that standpoint. But I wanted to call that out because, so for example, if you were to play $100, you're playing $100 right now. If you were to play $100 on some of those other sites, you're actually playing about $84. That's what's coming off the top and not coming back out of the price pool. A lot of people have a little misunderstanding on how that math works. So very, very important.
For sure, it adds up quickly. So absolutely check that out. In the meantime, we do have the one game, which is a whole different animal. I'll be honest, when this first started, I wasn't sure it was going to be popular. And like an idiot, look how popular. We have $1 million up top for DraftKings tonight. Big prizes on Fanduel as well. And like I said, a competitive game in the NFC North. Where do you want to start? Do you want to hop into the game, talk about the two teams, or do you want to get right into, the showdown itself?
Let's talk about the games a little bit here. Okay. I'm going to kick this off. We're going to talk. I'll let you go over the inactives, but at the high level, I did want to call out that we do have the popularity projections. Let's call them ownership percentages, and we also have single game slate projections for the showdown slate. So that's something that not a lot of the other sites are offering. Tonight it's the Packers at the Bears. Bears, last I looked, were a field goal favorite, 46.5 over under. We know that Trey Burton is out, so this is going to be a huge thing that we want to call out up front. So you have Adam Shaheen, who is also known as Baby Gronk. He was a D2 basketball player before transferring to Ashland College, where he played tight end. He was a second-round draft pick, number 45 overall. He is 6'6", depending on your site of source, somewhere between 265 and 280. This is his third season. So in his first two, he has 20 total targets, 17 receptions, 175 yards, 4 touchdowns. So that's pretty good. He's very active in the red zone. But let's keep in mind, he is not Gronkowski, and Tom Brady is not throwing him passes. He is, however, 600 in your DK captain slot, 400 in the regular slot, and he's 5,000 flat on Fanduel. Do you want to hit on the? I've got to pull up a couple things. So you want to talk about the other inactives?
Sure, it's not much else to really report that I think was going to make a big impact. He was really, Trey Burton, I think most people expected him to sit at this point. And I don't want to say this takes the theme of the entire slate, but even as I look at chat right now, most of the discussion is, do you take a pure punt in Shaheen? He can, if he catches a touchdown, obviously that's going to define the entire slate. He's also very live to just have a goose egg in this Bears offense. It's not concentrated target share. So it's not like it's an automatic plug and play. Ownership, some people are obviously going to move on that. There'll be plenty of people who don't use him, but he certainly frees up a ton of space. If you're plugging, we're going to get into this with the captain. If you're using a quarterback at captain, if you're using Davante Adams at captain, Shaheen is going to be massively correlated to those type of lineups because he frees up a ton of salary.
Absolutely, and that's just one of the things that we really want to talk about. There was and there still is an edge in the showdown slates. One, a lot of people don't really know what they're doing, and two, a lot of times it's after a day of drinking beer and you're doing it on Sunday night and you may not be making the best decisions. What you need to do is figure out how is the game going to play out where it can help you. If you're going to play both quarterbacks, if you're going to play a couple kickers and then the next two best players, that's called a cash game. Don't put that in the big tournaments. It's not worthwhile. If you want to play that route and feel safe, no problem. A lot of other choices. Play some head-to-heads. I also found success in the three-mans last year where I would play a relatively safe lineup and I would let other people make the mistakes. Now, it's not like you get some sort of massive advantage here, but winning is winning, and winning is not redepositing. So that's very, very important. If you're going to play the 50-50s, just do single entry. Don't do the other stuff. There's a bunch of people that are now giving out the information or the keys to the kingdom of what was successful last year. That's slowly going to grow over time. But weird stuff still happens because in the Super Bowl last year, I believe the guy or the gamer that won either the clean million or it was split by two people, they played like 3 running backs and no Tom Brady in their thing. Weird stuff can happen. This is the NFL. Now, we're not expecting a slugfest tonight. But if it goes sideways and you've got defenses and the kickers and you get the 1 or 2 guys that score a touchdown, you're going to have a huge leg up on people. If you're going to play, how do you build? So I like the safe route, but this year I'm branching out into the mass multi-entry.
So yeah, you talked about it. Step one is you want to know what you're playing in. If you're playing in the big $10, say on DraftKings, you're trying to box out hundreds of thousands of people. That's a little different than if you're playing in a survivor type or a 50-50 or something like that, where you're looking at floors, you're more cognizant of that. Kickers are a great example. A kicker's ceiling, realistically, 12, 15, maybe if something crazy happens. Most likely that's not going to get it done in a large field GPP, especially at like a captain spot. But in some other formats, it can be a little more effective. But all in all, it's just about telling a story. You want to say, okay, what do I think is going to happen in this game? And you build, depending on how many lineups you're going to do, you want to build in clusters. That's how I would do it and how I do it. Pick a narrative, stick to it, and build some permutations based on that game script. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but if you get the game right, then your lineup should reflect at least the right, game script and flow.
All right. Now, the thing that is very, very helpful is the popularity. Who's going to be popular? Who's not going to be popular? Tonight, I'm opening up. We're going to talk mostly on DraftKings because that's what I'm building right now. I had a busy day at work, didn't get into all my lineups. Got about $100 riding on this. 2 in the big $1 million at the top, and then $100 in dollars, quarters, and dimes because I wanted to perfect my strategy of how am I going to build groups and all of that on Fantasy Cruncher. I did not get to that today, but we'll talk about that. Now, does that mean I'm down and out? No, it doesn't because there are ways to do it. Am I going to be doing this optimally? No, I'm probably not. So just for quick starters, what it is, I really, really, really like Davante Adams. I said if he is going to be my captain, then or my MVP, depending on the terminology of your site, then I want to have Aaron Rodgers in that lineup. If I've got Aaron Rodgers, then I want to pick 2 or 3 of his own pass catchers. Same thing with Trubisky. Now, Trubisky, I've opened it up. I want to have Cohen in there. I want to have Shaheen in there. With Rodgers, I don't. I want his 3 receivers, and that's really about it. I don't trust Graham. I don't trust Williams. Now, it looks like Williams is going to be the main backup tonight. probably the better pass catching guy, but is it going to be him or Aaron Jones? We're hearing different stories. We're not going to know until this happens. But that's my basic lineup. Now, if you wanted to get more advanced, this is where Ben's going to take over here. Probably don't want to play a defense against certain teams. If you're using an optimizer, make sure you set it. I can play 3 or 4, whatever you want, players against a defense, or you're just not going to get any defenses. So that's key to understand. And then I usually set a group that says no more than 2 of the kickers and the defenses, because I don't want 3 or 4 of them in here. Just not going to do what I wanted. What else do you look for, Ben?
So yeah, what I do when you build, the first thing after you build a lineup, you want to step back and say, okay, does this even make sense? Obviously, if you have, say, 4 receivers, well, then it figures if all of them are going to get there, you're going to need the quarterback, things of that nature. Now, defenses are such a wild card because one crazy turnover, a pick 6, that can change the whole narrative. And in some games, as we get into the year, there will be times in Showdown where I'll actually stack a team. Say I use, for example, Trubisky, Anthony Miller, Allen Robinson, and I'll use the Packers defense, hoping that maybe they get an early pick 6 and it forces the Bears to be in attack mode. It's a very aggressive play. It's certainly not optimal for a cash setting, but in a large field tournament, I do think that is something to explore. Just to step back a little bit, the captain spot is what I think really defines Showdown. The quarterbacks and Davante Adams, to me, are going to be the 3 most popular captains. I don't think that's really in dispute. Do you see merit to maybe mixing it up there? Or when you look to build today, are you saying, you know what, I want one of those 3 and I'll make a difference and make a stand somewhere else?
All right, so let's handle this kind of separately. Let's hit FanDuel real quick. Now, I prefer this particular format. I prefer Draftkings because what it does is for your captain or your MVP, they score 1.5 times the points. They also cost 1.5 times their base salary. You really, if somebody like Shaheen's really going to open some stuff up there. If you use him at the captain spot, that's fine. Oh my God, if he were to get 3 catches and 25 yards, that would be amazing. And anybody that doesn't play him is probably going to be at a severe disadvantage if that happens, assuming that you've got the quarterbacks, the receivers, all these other highfalutin guys that get the good stats. FanDuel, it's a little different. FanDuel, there's no restriction within the positions on what your roster is. So if you have the person, I think it's 1.5 times is their MVP. I think it's 1.25 is the other one. I forget what they call it, the superstar. And then they have the 3 other positions. So everybody's going to be inclined to put, Rodgers, Trubisky, Davante Adams in those two of those 3 spots. Whereas on DraftKings, they may want to, but there are other ways to get there. On FanDuel, it just feels silly, and all of a sudden I'm building a cash lineup or a safe lineup because I don't feel like I want to put in those other guys. And then I'm not going to win the tournament because you have to be different in these tournaments because you're going to chop it anyway.
On FanDuel specifically, and I think this goes to DraftKings, it's a little different because the salary multiplies, but you got to be really careful with taking a cheap captain because you're not getting any salary on FanDuel. You're being different, but it's a big ask to have someone down to outscore all the top names where you may have the right 6 guys, but you actually just don't have the right captain. Or 5 guys over there. But on DraftKings, there's a different conversation to be had because if you pay for Davante Adams, he's almost $19,000 in the captain spot. That cripples the rest of your lineup, and that's where guys like Shaheen, a couple catches may be part of the optimal just because it allows you to build rosters that you aren't able to do unless you take someone at $400, and down there, he's one of the few guys that may even get, even a few targets.
And on FanDuel, what I did want to say is they have, and I'm trying to find the exact rules here, but shout out to FanDuel for making their site incredibly difficult to navigate for people that don't spend a lot of time there. There we go. So they've got this thing with their Thursday Million. It's $9 to get in. They're going to split $250,000 among anybody that has the player that scores the first touchdown of the game. I'm trying to find the rules to confirm that. I believe you have to have the person in your MVP slot and your captain slot.
Yeah, I believe so.
To be a part of that. So that is where all of a sudden maybe you put in Shaheen. Maybe you go with Tarik Cohen. I don't know. That's where the fun really starts to happen.
So Tarik Cohen is someone that I want to talk about. He is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. especially at captain on either site. And it's mostly because, and we've seen this, he's one of the largest range of outcomes type guys. He's a gadget guy. If he gets in space, he's incredibly fast, returns punts, home run ability. And that's really what you're looking for your captain spot. And on FanDuel in particular, he's not going to be a popular captain because, again, you're not incentivized to not choose one of the premier guys. But his ceiling is just as high as anyone else. Now, the floor is a little more dangerous, but at the same time, you're willing to bet on that in a large field tournament. So I found myself going to Cohen in a lot of spots tonight. Think Montgomery is going to suck up a lot of the ownership. Not a lot of people are going to pair them. That's a really against the grain strategy that I'm not in love with because it feels uncomfortable. But again, we're really talking about it's a delicate balance between doing something a little different and then being over the top and doing things that borderline make no sense.
Right. Now, what I want to call out here is some of the, and I like to call it popularity. But if we're looking at FanDuel, so the way we've got it set up here, and they'll do one more run before we get to kickoff. Kickoff is going to be at 8:20 tonight. So they're waiting for the news, inactives. They're taking a temperature. There are of social media, other inputs, etc. So there's a lot of things that goes into determining the popularity of where stuff's going to go. Obviously, Vegas line, stuff like that, lineup construction, group consensus, groupthink, etc. They put all this stuff into the magic little formula and come out with this. But right now, where we're sitting at on FanDuel is 2/3 of the lineups are going to have Rodgers, 2/3 are going to have Trubisky, and then you've got Allen Robinson and Davante Adams coming in as the next most popular guys. No big surprise there. FanDuel scoring generally lends itself but more to touchdowns than it does to and running backs that don't catch passes as much because they're half-point PPR. So they're not completely penalized, but that's where someone like Cohen is going to be down a little lower. It's where someone like the kickers may inch up a little higher than they would on DraftKings because it's not full-point PPR. So, somebody that gets 4 catches, that's a field goal. Okay, somebody that gets 4 catches on DK, that's they're going to outscore the field. Well, if it's 30 yards or in, but that's kind of the point there. On DK, it should be no surprise. Rodgers is going to be on about 75% of the lineups. Breaking it down, a quarter of them are going to have him as the captain. Half of them are going to have him as the flex. Trubisky's going to be a tick below that in both categories. Davante Adams about 10% below them. In those same metrics, and then Allen Robinson is the next guy. So it's kind of interesting how that shakes out. But if you feel like, oh, I've got Rodgers and Trubisky and Adams, great. So do 70% of the rest of the field in some combination there. How are you going to beat them?
And the problem is if you do that, you're almost, I don't want to say guaranteed, but you're going to have Shaheen in there because his salary is so directly tied to those guys at captain because the first thing you do, you're like, oh man, I just spent $19,000. I need a cheapie. Oh, let me get to him. So it's a difficult funnel position to get out of. And with the news that Burton is inactive, it actually, for me, makes me more incentivized to build balanced, particularly at the captain. There's a large mid-range that we've kind of touched upon, but we really haven't dug into, and we certainly will. I mentioned Tarik Cohen, but you've got guys like Allison, MVS, Anthony Miller on the other side, Montgomery. They're in that tier of, of course they're going to garner ownership. But for the captain, I think most people are really going to look to spend up. And then there'll be some people that maybe say, I want to punt with a defense or a kicker, or I guess Shaheen, which I don't recommend at all. But I find myself being a little more interested in maybe trying to take guys that are going to be out there, but aren't necessarily the primary targets for each team.
All right. I'm just putting a couple things I wanted to give everybody, now people have time. We've got, half hour before this is going to go. Give everybody a chance to build lineups, get their stuff set in. We've kind of given you a high level look. Now let's do a little more deep analysis, Ben. Let's go just by team, by position, just giving our thoughts. So Aaron Rodgers, oh my God, he is facing the Bears. The Bears are at home, and they had the number 1 DVOA rushing and passing defense, not combined, the number 1 in each category. Oh God, there's no way he can do well against them. Well, this lineup or this matchup feels familiar because these guys have played each other twice a year. If you remember last year, week 1 Sunday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers took a hit to the knee and was a little gimpy, came out at halftime looking a little glassy-eyed, but he was able to walk on the knee. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Had a little help there. but he came and led Green Bay back 3 touchdowns in the second half to end up winning that game. You would never expect that would happen. Last year, there were 4 players that threw for more than 274 yards against Chicago. Rodgers had 2 of those games. Brock Osweiler, let's remember Brocktober, week 6 had 380, Ben. Who knew? Who knew? This is like Mark Whitten hitting 4 home runs back in the day. And then Tom Brady, 277s. But it was Rodgers at 274 and then at 283. So just you want to keep that stuff in mind. So he's not impossible, but he's going to be very popular. Aaron Jones, what's going to happen, Ben? What is your thought on Jones? Is he going to get the passing down work? Is it going to be Jamal Williams? We know that Dexter Williams isn't it.
So he's one of the true wild cards this slate. Obviously, both sides. Well, I'll step back for 1 sec. Vic Fangio was gone from that defensive coordinator. He's taken the Broncos job. Maybe does that disrupt what they have there? Obviously, Khalil Mack and the gang are still there. But Chuck Pagano, maybe a new scheme, and we'll see what, Rodgers has not been good at Soldier Field in particular. So that is something to keep in mind. But on the other side, Matt LaFleur takes over for the Packers. Everyone is talking about, can he jumpstart the offense? Is he going to be better than McCarthy? I think it starts not with Aaron Rodgers, with Aaron Jones. A lot of people, including me, think that he should be getting a lot more work in the passing game. And although the Bears are a really difficult matchup, I would hope that they could get some innovative ways to get him the ball. So again, tough matchup here. I do have some, not a captain play for me. In certain scenarios and certain builds, I did look to him, but I'm honestly, I have the Bears, and we'll get there in a bit. The Bears ball carries a little ahead of him. And then Jamal Williams, like you said, going to be more spelling him. I don't see a huge role, but if he vultures one, you never know. Not really on the radar, though.
On to the oops, let me get my right field. Wide receiver, Davante Adams, he's my favorite guy. I love him as captain spot. He essentially led the league in targets last year. He didn't play the final week of the season, but on a per-game average, he and Hopkins and Odell Beckham and Julio were all like right there at the top, and then it was kind of everybody else, Juju, and then a bunch of other people came down. So we know his role is there. We know Rodgers is going to look at him. I mean, he had like 4 or 5 games where he had 14 or more targets. That's a lot, even in today's NFL. Now, the next question is, what happens with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS, or Geronimo Allison, GMO? Who gets to play in the slot? We don't know, but we want the person that plays in the slot. 1, because it's better, especially in full-point PPR, because they're going to turn around. They're going to get hit on a slant, a button hook, whatever. It's easier for them to go 3 and turn and catch the ball on a hot read or whatever, and all of a sudden they got 1 point for the catch and then 4 or 5 for the yards. Well, that's better than, it's the same as a running back hitting, oh my God, the running back just got 15 yards on that carry. Woohoo! All I need is 2 or 3 of those from my little slot receiver, and it's going to outperform the running back more often than not. But who gets that role? We don't know, because these guys were injured at different times. They both played the slot quite a bit. I suspect it will be Allison in the 3 wide receiver sets. I think if there's going to be something different, motion, 2 tight ends, splitting out a tight end, whatever, I think it'll be MVS. Have you heard anything more on that, or do you have anything more concrete?
No, that's something, to consider. And again, if you're building different teams, you can mix and match those guys. Davante Adams he's first of all, he's fantastic. We all know that. He's going to be peppered with targets. And the Bears, as good as they were basically across the board last year, they weren't exactly locked down against number 1 wide receivers. They did show some vulnerability there. So it's not like that's not exploitable. And it can only help if guys like Allison and MVS can at least keep them honest, maybe Aaron Jones as well. So a guy that, you're going to want to have some Davante Adams personally, as I mentioned. As a captain, I think it's very difficult to separate when you do that. Can you do it? Of course, but it's just, I found myself going elsewhere and trying to be a little more against the grain. There's something throughout the year that I'm going to continue to talk about, and I don't have it firmly down, but I do think there is a way that you, especially when we get concentrated ownership with the captain, where you can almost fade a guy while playing him, just not in the captain spot. I think that's a really interesting concept that I'm certainly going to explore on this show throughout the year, where a guy like Davante Adams or whoever's going to be that top captain, it's not that I'm not going to play them. It's just maybe I just use them for the standard point, not the multiplier. And in a way, there's a middle ground where I actually pick up on the field despite them not playing great.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point because you're really not losing. You're just half of it. Okay. Well,
Exactly.
what if the guy you have in the captain spot does better than that half margin with something? Interesting way to think about it. This is where I kind of mentioned at the top. I think people are getting better at this. They are, but it doesn't mean the edge is going away by any stretch. It's going to evolve, much like the other sports. I think it's going to take some time for other gamers to catch up. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Tight ends for Green Bay, waving them off. Really don't want Graham. I can't even remember who the other guy is, which is horrible because I broke the article.
There's not much there. Well, Sternberger was the guy that I honestly thought was going to be interesting, and then he got severely damaged.
He's hurt. I
He's
think it
gone.
could be Jake Kumaro. He's like the fourth or fifth wide receiver, but he could see kind of that H-back secondary tight, whatever you want to call it. He could be the guy down in the red zone in lieu of a two tight end set where they're going to fake a run and throw it to somebody.
So he's a guy in particular. If you're looking to there are two guys that I want to mention who are both active, I believe. If not, obviously, chat will correct me on the Packers. If you say, you know what, I want to do the roster construction where Shaheen comes into play, but I don't want to use him, I want to pivot against it. You could look to Kumarov, who, again, this is someone who's very live for a zero. And then they kind of have a gadget guy in Dan Vitale. Using him a little all over the field, but I don't know exactly what they want to do. This comes down to, this is week 1. We don't have a body of work with Matt LaFleur with him. He's $300 in the captain spot. So it's, as low as you're going. Again, you're very live for a zero, but if you want to be against the grain in terms of personnel, but not lineup construction in terms of the salary, that is a way to do it. I've seen his name thrown around. He's not going to be popular. So if you think he gets some snaps out there, it is worth a throw if you're making enough teams.
Northwestern, though, Ben.
Northwestern, that's right. Absolutely. Wildcat.
I was still playing the first round of college football DFS when he was in play. Because I remember, I think Fanduel didn't always have him at the right position. Or we thought he was going to be a running back and they listed him as tight. I forget what the deal is. I remember he had some carries because he was kind of a tweener when he first started out.
He's a do-it-all kind of guy. And that's, what you're banking on. It's almost similar to the tight end situation with the Bears. You're hoping he falls in the end zone. Maybe there's pass interference. Maybe there's something on the one and they do some type of fullback dive and he's the one who benefits because, the volume is not going to be there with a guy like that. You're trying to separate, though, from hundreds of thousands of teams. That's a way to do it if he can somehow grab you 6-8 points.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, I just accidentally deleted my crunches, so I'm just going to have some fun here. We're going to hand build a couple of my more expensive ones. Now, I've only got 2 into the big $1 million one tonight, but Little Birdie just mentioned there might be a little bit of overlay there on a site that rhymes with Yoo-Hoo. For their Thursday to Monday contest. You could set a lineup there. You can go look at the other sites because this could be the case as well. But you can set a lineup, not have anybody active in tonight's game, and then build it out the rest of the way. That's what I've done with all of my Thursday through Monday contests. The other thing I wanted to mention with our sponsored Fantasy Draft, if you use the promo code AWESEMO now, you get your $1,000 in rake-free play. And that lasts 7 days. Well, you can sign up today, you can sign up tomorrow, you can sign up Saturday, and you'll still have that 7-day clock when they launch their contest next Tuesday. So you could get 2 weeks in there for the one promo code if you sign up today, tomorrow, or Saturday. So I just want to throw that out as a little. I know you're a bargain hunter from time to time, Ben. You like to eat out all your meals. You prefer steak. You bet on the ponies, but you do like a good deal when you can find it. I know you.
Can't turn it down a deal. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll take one of these Packer cheapies that we've been talking about and see what we can muster up. I'm with you just to kind of put a bow on the Packers. Jimmy Graham is a guy, this is not the Seahawk Jimmy Graham. He's another one. You're banking on that touchdown. You hope he gets some looks in the red zone if you're going there. I don't see any merit to using him in the captain. If he fills, a kind of a price point for you, more power to you, but overall not a guy that's super on the radar. Anything else on the Packers side before we dive into what I think is the more difficult team to break down in the Bears?
Let's head over to the Bears.
All right.
Trubisky, of course. Hey, everybody knows him. Yes, he does run. I think I've worked it out. He averages about 40 rushing yards per game. A huge chunk of his massive games all came in about a 1 month span. He was my number 3, almost my number 2, just barely behind Jameis Winston in best. Not rationally discuss Trubisky. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I think the Green Bay defense is going to be a little more improved, but I loved him in these best ball formats because I'll take those big games if he has a dud, whatever. So I paired him and Winston, him and Jake Allen, him and Jackson from Baltimore, etc. Just hoping they boom and bust on different weeks, which will be very helpful for me. But what are you liking? What are you worried about with Trubisky tonight?
So Trubisky, not that we're going to get into this, but he really needs, if the Bears are going to do what a lot of people think they could, which is win the North and be a contender, he needs to stop making really bad throws, some bad decision making. He's got all the talent. He's mobile. We've seen that, and that's part of the reason you just talked about in best ball format. He has that ceiling. And in a game like tonight, it's only one game, so you can look at it two ways. If he's very popular, and we know that the quarterbacks will be, I mean, we've seen him really struggle, not just with bad decision making, but just some really dud games. Obviously, he has the upside to completely nuke a slate, so you can go there. You can go there in a captain spot. I found myself more likely to pair up. When I used one of his receivers at the captain spot, I did use him, but not in the captain spot since there's only one. And overall, I do think the Packers defense will be much improved. And I think they're actually, if you're looking for a punt that's against the grain, I think they're a little sneaky. And it's not because I expect, them to decimate this team, but I think the way he's just so turnover prone at times, they may be able to get a couple, and that could be the difference for a cheap price point like them.
All right, let's see. We just got the old popularity updated. So for those of you scoring along, changes here. We got 18 minutes to go. Looks like we are seeing on DK Davante Adams, and then we had some major shifts here. So Davante Adams is going to be the most popular play. 20% captain, 51% flex. I'm guessing some people may have read my article because he was my number 1 guy. Yeah, that was a real stretch. Aaron Rodgers is 2 at 60%, 20 and 40 captain versus flex. Trubisky is 3, about the same as Rodgers. Then Allen Robinson jumped up, and then Shaheen, 4% captain, but 45% on in the flex spot. Over on Fanduel, we're looking at Rodgers coming in on 70% of the lineups, 30% he'll be the MVP. No surprise there. 39% flex. Trubisky will be 63%, again 30% MVP, 35 flex, and then Davante Adams is number 3 over there. Makes sense because half point PPR. Where is Shaheen over there? I'm sure you're asking. He is about 14th. He is going to be on 21% of the teams, 20% of in flex, 1% captain is the guess. Does any of that surprise you?
Not really, to be honest. I think he's the obvious punt. Those are the big names, but I was, while you were talking about that and kind of giving the update, I was looking at our chat, and I got to give a shout out to the Quilites. He mentioned Taylor Gabriel as a sleeper, and I totally agree. He is one of the guys. He's not getting a lot of talk, and I get it because his role isn't nearly as secure as a guy like Allen Robinson. And Anthony Miller, I think, is a kind of a decent blend between the two. He's a little more higher on the totem pole in terms of target share, but Taylor Gabriel is a guy we know is explosive. Even when he was in Atlanta, he did, they got him in space and he had some big games there. That is the type of he's not going to be a popular captain. If you're making, if you're MMing, you can roll the dice with someone like that. And I think that's the way to separate without being crazy. He's someone I'm really interested in tonight. Do you have any thoughts on Gabriel, or does he not make in the list for you?
No, he actually is. He's like a poor man's Cohen. He was one of the, so here's the interesting thing about the Bears receivers, and my whole thing just crapped out here. So I'm just going to do a potpourri of entering here. But whatever, that's okay. Put a lot of time into the little article here. All 3 of the receivers were new last year. You had Robinson coming from Jacksonville. Yep. He hurt himself in the first game, missed the entire season. So he not only was he on a new team, but he was been out for a whole year. You had Miller, who was a draft pick, so he was a rookie, and then you had Gabriel, who came over from the Falcons. Now, I'm sure you guys remember him from the Falcons because he was one of those guys that you get in space, and all of a sudden you'd think, oh my God, Tevin Coleman, he took one from the wing and he's going to score. No, that was Gabriel. Gabriel's very good in space. If they can get him the ball, he's very, very fast. But he doesn't have the best hands. He's not the biggest guy, and he's not the best route runner. Those kind of work against you there. Plus, down in the pecking order, it's going to be hard. Tonight, anything goes. We're touchdown hunting at this point, and he, like Tarik Cohen, can score from anywhere on the field. I like that.
That's the thing that I want to kind of try to hammer home. When I evaluate these players for Showdown, there's two different kind of processes, and of course they intersect. It's, do they make a good play? And then if I do play them, if they go off, what are the chances that I should be using them in the captain spot? And to me, Tarik Cohen and Taylor Gabriel are guys where I have when I do use them, I actually use them more often in the captain spot because their ceiling games are so high. The problem is their floor. But in a thing like Showdown, if you have them in the captain spot and they bomb, you're dead. If you have them in your regular spot and they bomb, you're in massive trouble. You're not taking anything down in a meaningful way in terms of tournaments. So it's not that big of downside. You might as well roll the dice to the fullest extent. And then if you hit the ceiling, you want the 1.5 multiplier with a guy like that. So you might as well take full advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's see. Did it save my groups? No, it did not. So here we go. YOLO time. Let's see. We talked about there. We talked about Shaheen. So I think we hit everything. Let's see what we got coming in from chat for questions. Oh, kickers. We didn't really go on the kickers.
Yeah.
Not really a kicker night for me. Again, back to the beginning, sort of the cash game thing is both quarterbacks, both kickers, and then the next two best players on DK, next best player on Fanduel. But you're hoping the other people make mistakes. That's all you're trying to do. You're going for the floor, and you're hoping that they play some. You're hoping they play Gabriel, or you're hoping they play Miller and they don't do anything, and then you beat them by 7 points, and it's not very exciting. Play thus in 3-mans, it gets a little more exciting because you get almost double your money. You get a little bit better return and almost as good a return as a 2 percentile or a 98 percentile lineup in the big tournaments. Just saying, don't forget about these 3-mans. Pick one where you don't recognize one of the names, and you're good to go.
Kickers, it's very difficult. First of all, I don't try to have hard and fast rules. I don't like playing kickers outside, particularly in Soldier Field. I know it's not a cold, windy night, but it's still not ideal. And the real problem, and we've both talked about this already, is the ceiling. It's barring something outrageous. They're not going to be giving you more than double-digit points. So if they fit a need, there are some times where if your script is really radical and you say it's going to be a grinded out, really ugly game, 13-6, maybe you do go there. If you think fantasy points on the whole are going to be limited, that 7 that Crosby gives you, or Pinero, I guess could be valuable. But more often than not, if this game hits the total or goes over, I don't see many scenarios where the kickers are actually in the optimal.
That's something that I think obvious, but it's not. And just, again, weird stuff can happen. Weird stuff can happen in the game. Somebody could get hurt, somebody breaks a long one, somebody's uncovered and they get a 70-yard broken play touchdown, somebody falls down and they're off to the races, and it's not. That's going to happen over these 57 that are on Monday night and some of the other bonus games like Thanksgiving, etc.
We did have another name that Jackson just threw out in chat, and it's, again, this is where we're getting down to it. Cordarrelle Patterson is on the Bears, and that's someone we've seen. We know how fast he is. He's extremely explosive. I guess you could make a case that he if he's returning kickoffs, which he usually does, you could try to double dip in the sense if you play him with the Bears defense and say he returns it for a touchdown, boom, you get the double points. I'm not sure how often he'll be on the field in terms of running routes. Maybe he vultures a little from Gabriel, and maybe he gets in some of these packages. They're running a lot of wide receivers. You're praying for a target or two at best, but he does have that home run ability if you think that he could break one on a kickoff. And that's a name, again, not going to be popular, and that is valuable in a situation like Showdown.
All right, I just hit the button. I'm counting on Osmo's projections here, and I'm going to play these 100 lineups.
Let them fly.
in my games. There also are second half contests and fourth quarter contests. We'll at kickoff. We'll spend a minute talking about those there. Strategies on that, and we should be no strangers to them after having those come along in during the Pro Bowl and then the NBA. And let's just say people make a lot of mistakes when they are doing. And talk for a second.
I will. So we had a couple things in chat. Just a couple questions. I'll fire them off. Taylor Gabriel or Jamal Williams on Fanduel. For me, it would be Gabriel. He's not a big PPR guy anyway, so it doesn't really matter there. He's got the upside, even though, again, you're banking on him getting those targets. If he gets one, I just see him more often than someone like Jamal Williams having a big game. Favorite cheap cash plays, obviously Shaheen. It's going to be hard to fade if you're looking to spend up at that captain. Someone like Davante Adams, something where you want to get both quarterbacks in there. I don't know about that, but are we going to stream the game or just talk about it? Just talk about it. I wish we could stream it. That would be. I'll reenact it. Hopefully the Packers. I will say just real quick while you're getting that, I did not. I've been putting out some content on the betting side of things over at Osmo. Feel free to check it out. I don't have a play in this game. I thought it was pretty fair across the board. Bears slight favorite. The over-under seemed spot on to me, so I did not make a play here. It's going to be a tough game. I know we have a couple minutes before it locks, and Chad, feel free to drop in some questions. Do you have just a real quick, who do you think wins the game?
For me, I am going to say Chicago.
The Bears. Fair enough.
And I think they're going to win by double digits.
Really?
I think it's or a 2-score game. So let's say they'll win by more than 7 at least. So I think it'll be a touchdown or field goal victory.
Okay, fair enough. I'm very interested to see it. Obviously, I've built my lineups with a couple different narratives. You can do the onslaught. That's something we didn't dive into too much, but I'll be on the show every Thursday when we'll get into it. Most people, including myself, you have 3 Packers and 3 Bears, or 4 Packers and 2 Bears, 4 Bears and 2 Packers. Very rarely do you see the 5 and 1 because it just looks weird. It's usually doesn't add right. But it can be very effective if you build one that at least has a narrative attached to it. So don't be afraid to do that. Montgomery or Cohen, to me, Cohen's the better captain. Montgomery has the higher floor. So we'll see what they do. I've seen a lot of Montgomery at Iowa State. He's looked great in the preseason. The hype is there for the Bears. Tarik Cohen, though, we've seen in the NFL how explosive he can be. I think he makes a better captain. But if I had to pick one for a cash setting, or maybe someone to just not kill my lineups, it would be Montgomery. You think that makes sense?
On that one, I do, because that would be the way I would go. Nothing. I was listening.
So. No,
I'm getting this guy Ben Braun something or other. He's the backup tight end, and he's in way too many.
So he's, it's an if you again, because we don't know, it's week 1. If you think that maybe Shaheen isn't the guy who steps over Burton, Bronnecker is another pure punt. You're looking at a 0 floor, but that's what you have to accept when you're paying $300 for someone. So that's tough. Allison or MVS, that's a true coin toss for me. I'd go Allison, but that's a coin toss.
I would go MVS, and I don't feel good either way. I really think they're going to split time. I like MVS because he can play on the outside.
There's merit to both of them on the slate. Equinemius St. Brown is hurt, so he's not a factor. And we've talked about some of the next options up for the Packers. It's not much, in terms of depth. So we'll see. And it comes down to me, we have more questions than answers, and that's what week 1 is all about. We'll be doing this all week. Sunday, you can catch me, Luffy, and Alex breaking down the full slate, the 12-gamer. And we're going to be saying, or I certainly will, we have more questions than answers with a lot of these teams. New coaches, new schemes. And I want to see if Matt LaFleur really can get Rodgers and this offense maybe a jump start against what's going to be one of the toughest tests of the entire season. So if the Packers start slow, it's not all doom and gloom in Lambeau just yet, but it is something to consider. All three running backs.
You can do it. It's going to be such a rare outcome, but that is what won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So
Mike Davis, we didn't really hit on. I wanted to play him a little more. I just YOLO'd it. I'll talk about my percentages here in a second. We can have to chuckle. But Mike Davis, I think, is solid. All it's going to take for Montgomery is to fumble or have a blown assignment, and he may get to watch this one on the bench. A lot of pressure here. All eyes on the coaches. They're going to want to make a big showing, and they hate turnovers and sacks allowed. So I could see Mike Davis potentially having a path to he's the guy. We know he can handle both ends of the game because he carved out a role in Seattle. As the third guy, surpassed Penny, and then was right there when Carson was dinged up. So he's a solid player.
He is a solid player, and I get that. There's some reason for it, but I felt that he was a little overpriced, especially on DraftKings.
Yeah.
4,200, and that's not in the captain spot. That's just the standard price. It didn't really, if he was 2,000, man, I would be looking to him heavy because he would fill a need. But there was a lot of teams. I actually couldn't afford him. And when I did play him, it didn't really work. It made me sacrifice something up top that I wasn't prepared to do for a guy that there's a lot of red flags with him. I know he's got some talent, but Montgomery, they're very high on, and Tarik Cohen is going to be a guy who gets touches in this offense. So it's a little difficult to go there, but we'll see.
And I didn't get any. I looked at mine here. The reason I didn't get any is that's the storytelling. He needs something to happen before he's going to come into problem. Otherwise, he get 3 or 4 carries and a target. Okay, that could turn into 2 DK points. So
yeah,
it's not very exciting.
No, that's what we got to really deal with. We didn't really, real quick. You said you liked Allen Robinson.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts? He's a guy I use, not much in the captain though.
So I would have preferred to have done things differently. I ended up with 22% of him in my regular stuff. My captain, I put, because I like Davante Adams, I've got him in 45% of my captain spot. Okay. So it's all, and then I've got 20% Shaheen because that's just what the optimizer wanted to do. So I didn't really differentiate with my captain spot. I would have liked him there. He's a specific build for me. If you are going to play him, then I would say, all right, him, Cohen, and Trubisky. I probably wouldn't play him with Miller just because I think they're semi-redundant. The other thing you want to remember is, and I like Miller, I like him as a third receiver, though I like him in best ball. He had, 35 catches or whatever last year. He had 7 touchdowns. That is clearly not sustainable. Yay, he has a nose for the end zone, but that's a rate that if that's what your projections are focused on or your sources, it's going to be hard to have that play out again. He will probably have 4 touchdowns this year and then, double the catches and triple the yards. But that's where we are. And then Gabriel, I don't mind playing Gabriel with anybody or Cohen with anybody because they can score from anywhere.
For sure. If you do, again, and I know we've summarized this when we got a couple minutes left, if you're playing, say, like Allen Robinson in the captain and you have one of the other pass catchers, I would strongly recommend playing Trubisky because you just have to think about it logically. Mm-hmm. What could happen where both of them get there and Trubisky doesn't? And that's the kind of stuff you would think, oh, that's really obvious. A lot of people's lineups will be dead before we even start just because they don't make any sense.
Right. A couple other things. Reminder, back to Fantasydraft, the sponsor. You're going to want to think about them. Use that promo code OSMO, and you get $1,000 towards your rake-free play. That you have 7 days to use that when you come in with the promo code OSMO. Now, since everybody's at lock now, we're a little delayed here. We're at 8:19. You guys will be at kickoff in a second. Just a reminder, when you go to deposit, there's a 3% service charge. That's okay. That's not a problem because you're playing rake-free. DraftKings, Fanduel, the other sides don't charge you when you put in a deposit, but then when you play that first game, they're charging you 15.9%. Which is more, 15.9% or 3%? Yeah, 15.9. So don't get bent out of shape on that. The people that are bitching about that on Twitter are idiots and they're not doing the math. You got to do the math here. You got to be smart about this. And people were like, oh, I'm not going to deposit. I can't believe they're doing this. Guys, you're going to do that. You pay your little subscription if you're not using the Osmo. Again, $1,000, 7 days, that's going to cover most of us. And if you do it now, you can get into the week 2 contest as well. That's totally fine. It's not going to be an issue, and you're going to spend a quarter of what you would on DK or FanDuel. I'm sorry, that's how the math works.
Absolutely. And, this is something we're going to be talking about a lot. It depends what kind of player you are, but if you're looking, and a lot of people are, if you're grinding up, you want to build a bankroll, there's a lot of ways to take advantage, and Fantasy Draft is one of them. So go check that out. We made it. We are underway. The NFL season has begun. I am not in the red yet. This is a nice feeling. Pretty good. I'm gonna savor this moment until someone does something stupid. It feels good. Thanks for hopping on with me today. This was fun, and it's been a good start to the year. I'm really excited to see this game.
Absolutely. Now remember, when we're out there playing, we got a ton more content. We've done shows every day for NFL. Those are evergreen content for this Sunday's sport. You can catch those on the YouTube channel. We got a couple of them up on podcast. A little bit of hurricane issue with some of the people being on the back end there. So not all of them are going to be on podcast. But going forward, those are going to all be on podcast. You have Laffy and Sal Vitri is joining us. He has done 2 shows with Laffy. We're going to have Manny Laura working in here. On Sunday morning, you're going to get Ben and Laffy together going over the games. We have a lot of content coming out here. We've got the projections behind the scene. We've got a new Express package. You can sign up. You don't get everything for NFL, but as an example, if you want to sign up for 1 week and get most of the key content, I think it's $3.95. Okay, that again, it's not the full package. If you want the full 1 week package, I think that's like $8 or whatever for NFL. That'll get you the popularity percentages, ownership, etc. But it's a good deal. Give us a try. There's no excuse not to. You want to jump in for a full month, you get 50% off if you use the promo code Live Before we Lock. Lots of ways for you guys to get in here. We're going to get on out of here. Ben, I didn't enter any of the contests, Thursday through Monday where there was overlay. I was more worried about saving my $120 here. We'll see. It's all a big dice roll in the single game contest, but we are back. Football 17 weeks ahead, plus 3 playoff weeks, plus Pro Bowl, plus Super Bowl. We got you covered into February.
Yes, sir.
Valentine's Day, baby. This is it. This is our love affair. With that, you can follow Ben at JazzRazDFS. I am at EMACDFS, and of course, it is Osmo_COM. Good luck, gamers.